Tell me when. Hey, everybody. So glad you're joining us today. My name is Chris Hearn. I'm the founder and CEO of Fountainhead. We do 7A loans, 504 loans, and low LTV conventional loans all over the country. We're one of the few SBA approved and licensed non-bank lenders. And I wanted to have a quick, what do we call this, Matt? Live talk, Facebook Live conversation. Tell you a little bit about what's coming down the pike to try and help small businesses all over this country who've been affected by the coronavirus. So this has been a very interesting, shall we say, week in business, and I'm sure in all of your personal lives dealing with the fallout from this. So I just wanted to kind of jump on here, give people an opportunity to ask me some questions. I have been staying absolutely on the cusp of what's happening and what's about to happen. I don't have the cure. I've already had that question asked, but I definitely don't have that. I don't even pretend to be a microbiologist on TV. So we want to talk to you a little bit about how we here at Fountainhead, with the SBA's efforts, are going to be able to help a lot of small to mid-sized companies all over America in the coming weeks and months ahead. So here's what we do know. There was a piece of legislation that was drafted by our home state senator, who happens to be the chairman of the Senate Small Business Committee, which is Chairman Rubio. It's called IMPACT, IMPACT, and it is a piece of legislation that authorizes the additional $50 billion to be added to the 7A's lending authority for the remainder of this fiscal year. So the SBA 7A loan is a loan that's often used for working capital purposes for small businesses. It's oftentimes used for business acquisitions, partner buyouts, leasehold improvements, equipment, all sorts of different things. But the most important use of proceeds really is going to be for working capital. They want to be able to help, and we want to be able to help businesses stay open, not close their doors, help them to pay their vendors, to pay their employees, not lay people off, not fire people, all over the fallout from the coronavirus. So this additional $50 billion that you might have heard President Trump talk about a couple nights ago, this legislation actually is meant to add that to the current $30 billion of 7A lending authority remaining for the rest of this year. So we go from $30 billion to $80 billion with the SBA's flagship program, which is the 7A. So that's pretty significant. Frankly, it's unprecedented. So that's the first bit of good news. These will all be, if you've been affected by this, if you're concerned, replying to us, sending us an email, phoning us, messaging us here on social media, we will have our standard application process to intake your inquiry. And these are all going to be 10-year amortization, working capital, 7A loans. We will get to these as fast as we can. We've actually been spending the day making sure our own staff are healthy, first and foremost, because we can't help you if we're not healthy. And we've been actually repositioning some folks. We've been spending some time training and teaching some of our folks who normally aren't involved in the underwriting process, who will now come over and help us to underwrite more of these 7A loans, because obviously time is of the essence. We want to be able to get the capital out as fast as possible to help America's small businesses and try to blunt the impact of this terrible virus. So we actually will have I think we're up to about 17 people that will just be dedicated to working on underwriting these credits to try and help you as a small business owner as fast as possible. So that's the first thing. Now, who's eligible for these funds? Again, you have to be a for-profit, privately held business, but I will tell you that we finance businesses with gross revenues from startups all the way up to, 50, 80, $100 million in revenue. So there's this misperception sometimes that SBA loans are only for the smallest, tiniest companies, and that's just frankly not true. So how quickly can you be approved to get one of these 7A loans to help in this process? We have become extremely well known for our speed of decisioning credits. Typically, we issue approval letters in 2 hours to 2 days. We are going to do all we can. My team's already prepared to work long hours to stay healthy. I'm probably going to be buying a lot of meals for my team over the next few months, but we will work our hardest to try and get these things approved, get you the capital that you need to continue to stay healthy as a business, and to help your business owners, and obviously to keep the American economy going. So I think you can expect to get approvals, like I said, in 2 hours to 2 days. That's what we've become known for doing. I'm getting a question here. This is not the disaster recovery funds. Some of you have heard about the disaster recovery funds. That was actually passed into law last week. I believe it was a little over $8 billion. And in that piece of legislation, there was only $20 million allocated to SBA disaster recovery loans. This is not that. That's kind of a drop in the bucket, quite frankly. What I'm referring to you, some of you may have seen some press releases issued by the SBA in the last day or two. That was all regarding their disaster relief loans. This has nothing to do with that. Those are loans made directly by the agency themselves. They frankly don't have the capacity, the staff, and the distribution mechanism to do something on the order of $50 billion. They actually have to rely on private sector lenders like ourselves, who are experienced and talented in making their loans. We are going to be the folks that carry the flag to get the new SBA 7A loans out into the hands of business owners. So this has nothing to do with disaster recovery loans directly made by SBA. These will be loans taking the existing mechanism that exists within SBA, the 7A loans, and actually making them more available. They will be waiving the fees to you as a prospective borrower. They will also be waiving the lender fees to someone like myself, who would normally pay the ongoing guarantee fee. They are boosting the guarantee amount, which doesn't really necessarily affect folks that are watching this. But the whole point is that the program will be more than 2 times by going from 30 billion up to 80 billion between now and the end of September. So what is eligible to be financed with these loans? I've already talked a little bit about that, but predominantly these are going to be 10-year working capital only loans. These are going to be loans that will be used to pay down your payables, help you with your payroll, possibly, I suppose, if you needed to make some leasehold improvements, to launch a marketing campaign, a variety of different things that are normally eligible for SBA 7A loans. And this will be the government's primary mechanism with which to try and help America's businesses, which is actually vastly different than it was, say, 12 years ago, when the government spent most of their energy helping large companies with bailout money. This is obviously directed at small to mid-sized companies, which I think is most appropriate, because those are the ones, like perhaps yours, that will be most affected with sort of the craziness that's been going on this week as it continues in the next few weeks. Last question I've got, unless somebody else has some questions for me. I'm sorry, I've got some questions already. So another question: banks, SBA lenders, does the lendings add funds? So the question I have from someone is banks and SBA lenders do the lending, so how does this add funds? Well, if you have a lending authority of 30 billion and you add 50 billion to it, that's an additional $50 billion. So that's $80 billion of access to capital that will be provided in an expedited fashion over the next 6.5 months. And who knows, maybe it'll get extended. But that's how we are adding funds. Frankly, the disaster relief funds, that's a totally different matter, as we've already talked about. Another question I've got, will the underwriting guidelines remain the same? At this time, the best I know, they will, in fact, remain the same. We have not been given any indication that they're going to be streamlined to some extent. Another piece of this legislation, the impact legislation, is that the SBA Express loan program, these are mostly loans that are used to provide lines of credit to small businesses. That maximum amount will be raised from $350,000 to $1 million. So that's a consideration. Let's see, what are some other questions we've got here? SBA 7A rate. I have a question about that. We expect the rate to be much like it is today, which is the statutory maximum is prime plus 275. Currently, that would be 7%. I think it's widely expected that the Fed will drop rates again starting next week, probably by Tuesday or Wednesday. So if they drop another 50 basis points, you'll be at 6.5% for these loans. Let's see. Another question: am I an underwriting the disaster loans? No, I'm not. We are not underwriting disaster loans. No one is underwriting disaster loans, but the agency as of right now. And they will have limited resources, unfortunately, to do that, which is why they're putting the emphasis on SBA 7A loans, a product they already offer. They're just frankly making a lot more of it available, and obviously waiving fees. Let's see, what else do we have? And by the way, if you've seen these press releases from the SBA in the last week, or excuse me, it hasn't been even a week. If you've seen the press releases in the last day or two indicating that they may go up to $2 million for these disaster loans, that only applies to that loan program that will be administered directly from the SBA. I don't know how that's exactly going to work. We don't have much more details than that. It will be a loan made directly from the agency. Where I think the emphasis is going to go from this point forward is to encourage borrowers that have been impacted by the virus to actually take down an SBA 7A loan from private sector lenders like ourselves. We would obviously underwrite those loans. We would close those loans and fund those loans. So that's where the emphasis is coming with this piece of legislation. Let's see, what else do we have? So another question is, would you apply through us? Yeah, you would apply through an experienced SBA lender like ourselves. And actually, interestingly enough, only 14% of all banks, credit unions, and non-bank lenders who could make an SBA loan actually made one in the last 12 months. So I would encourage you, if this is something you're considering, please work with somebody who does this for a living. Make sure it's not somebody, maybe your local bank who says they can do it, but they haven't done one in a couple years. You don't want to be somebody's guinea pig in a time of crisis like this. You want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing, who's made these types of loans, who does it day in and day out. We happen to be one of 14 non-bank lenders that are national, that are licensed and approved by SBA to make SBA 7A loans. So of those 14, 8 of us are for profit. So, if you want quick decisions, I would encourage you to reach out to us. Let's see, what else do we have? Another question: I'm a hotel owner with a conventional loan. How can I utilize these SBA funds? Again, this is not meant to replace necessarily your conventional loan that you may have on your real estate, for instance. This is meant predominantly to be working capital so that you can continue to meet payroll if your revenue has dipped dramatically, so that you can continue to pay your other vendors, so that we don't have this spiraling down effect that really could take us into unknown economic territory. We don't want to do that. So just because you have a conventional loan does not mean you would be ineligible to apply for an SBA 7A loan. Another question, did you say the SBA guarantee fee will be waived for borrowers? Yes, in fact, the SBA guarantee fee as part of this legislation will be waived for these borrowers. And obviously that'll come into effect as soon as the legislation leaves the Senate committee, approved, heads to the Senate floor, gets approved there, and then moves to the House. And obviously they'll have to have a conference committee before it would get to the president's desk. But all indications are that this is going to be fast-tracked. It's going to move very quickly, which is great because obviously we don't want this to spiral out of control. We want to provide as much relief as possible to American businesses. Another question, let's see. Do you do SBA Express loans? The other piece of this legislation I hadn't addressed yet, or maybe I did, I don't recall. It's kind of coming at me fast here. SBA Express loans will have their maximum loan amount raised from $350,000 to $1 million as part of this legislation once it gets passed. So while we don't currently do SBA Express loans, we are in the process of being approved to do them going forward. But again, I think our emphasis is mostly going to be on trying to get out as many working capital 7A loans as we can to help people out. I don't know that lines of credit are necessarily going to be the most effective right now. I think people will need some time to repay these loans back rather than putting them on some sort of a short-term revolver. And frankly, a 10-year SBA 7A loan does not have any prepayment penalties, so if things were to snap back in a V-like recovery, then people can pay back the loans and go their merry way. So that's what we hope. Let's see. Someone is asking me to put the highlights of the new legislation in an email and send it to your brokers ASAP. We want to get the word out. We can do that. We'll certainly do that. I'll actually give you a copy of the bill itself. Maybe if you've never read it, you might find that kind of interesting. Okay. Loan guarantees, are they going to go higher? Yeah, so the loan guarantees, we'll delve into this in the weeds a little bit here. The SBA 7A loan guarantees normally are 75%. They will be raised to 90% on these new loans once the legislation passes as part of this additional $50 billion that'll be added to the lending authority from now until the end of this fiscal year. And again, it's possible it could go beyond the end of this fiscal year. That would probably suggest that things are not going well, so we certainly don't want that to happen, but I suppose it's a possibility. Another question we have, do you know if they will lower the debt service coverage ratio requirements since businesses may suffer some losses? As of right now, we don't have any indications if there will be any relaxing of the current underwriting criteria or even the documentation criteria. We are hopeful that there may be. We are hopeful that perhaps they can use the SBA Express program as a template for which to reduce some of the documentation, but we don't have any other indications at this point. As it stands right now, the SBA 7A program requires a minimum of a 1.15 times debt service coverage, either historically or on a projected basis. So that will be something certainly will be talked more about in future Facebook Live posts like this as we get more indications out of the Senate. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Does working capital also include renovation money? Yeah, it can. I would probably classify that more as leasehold improvements or just outright renovations themselves. How about acquisitions that need renovation money to upflag the project? Yeah, that can also be the case. We'd call that a property improvement plan, a PIP. That could probably be part of this as well. Now, keep in mind the SBA 7A loans have a statutory cap of $5 million. So on a large hospitality project, I don't know, I suppose it depends on the uniqueness of your project, whether or not that's going to work for you or not. But collateral requirements, it's going to be the same as the current. We've been given no indications that it's somehow different than the current program. I would expect that to stay the same. But again, if they're going to waive borrower fees, guarantee fees, lender fees, have this big slug of capital available to help more businesses, I'm sure we're going to have situations where businesses that have not historically thought about getting an SBA loan will absolutely take advantage of this opportunity to try to get relatively inexpensive capital on very, very good terms. And so we hope to be a big part of that. Let's see. How long will these extra funds be available, and how quickly can you expect to receive them? As it stands right now, the legislation has indicated that the $50 billion will be added to the lending authority through the end of this fiscal year, which would be September 30th. The government is on an October 1 to September 30th fiscal year. So that's about 6.5 months from now. That assumes that this will really be fast-tracked through Congress and signed into law, again, hopefully this weekend, but I think I'm realistic. I've been through this a few times over my 20-plus years in the industry. My guess is it'll probably be around this time next week before everything is signed off. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's faster, but I wouldn't be shocked by that. In terms of how quickly you can expect to receive the funds, this is the rub. I mean, if we have to go through the normal process you're probably looking at about 30 to 40 days from application to actual funding, which that's not probably very lengthy for a lot of small businesses, especially if they've been in certain sectors that have been particularly crushed as a result of the virus panic. But we will do everything we can to certainly expedite that process as quickly as we can. So, and I suspect a lot of people, if you have a SBA loan approval from someone like us, my guess is you'll be able to use that as some negotiating with your payables to give yourself a little more time to get to that SBA loan funding to help you out. So. Let's see. Another question: would appraisals environmental still be required? Again, there hasn't been any guidance given on any changes regarding standard underwriting protocols. So, as far as appraisals, I would assume that we will still have appraisals required if it fits. We normally don't do appraisals for a working capital only 7A loan. Nor do we normally do environmentals because the use of proceeds are not being applied to commercial real estate or to business assets, like within a business acquisition where we'd get a business appraisal. So, I guess that's a tough one to answer. I don't know that we are going to have any additional requirements from the SBA for these loans. But if they're predominantly working capital 7A loans, then I would not expect that appraisals and environmentals are necessarily going to apply. Now, if you do leasehold improvements, you're going to need an appraisal. If you're, for some reason, buying a business down the street, you're going to need a business valuation. If you're buying a piece of property, I'm not sure how that necessarily would be helping the recovery efforts, but maybe you can make an argument for that. So if you're buying real estate, you would need a commercial appraisal. You would need an environmental on that as well. Minimum loan size for 7As. Ours is $200,000, but it differs from lender to lender. The SBA Express loan program, as I said, normally goes up to $350,000 as its minimum, but now if this legislation gets passed, we'll go up to $1 million. We will do 7As from $200,000 up to $5 million, which is the statutory cap. So, what other questions do we have, gang? You got me? I'm here. I think I've covered all the talking points I wanted to. We're not panicking. We're putting in measures to try to help as many business owners as we can. As I said, I've taken nearly half of my staff, some of which already were in our credit department. We have added more people into that. We will be probably hiring some additional folks to help us with this as well. But we fully expect that our best-in-class underwriting process, the speed with which we make decisions, will be truly beneficial here, and we hope we can help as many people as possible. I'm seeing another couple of more questions. Time span from application to closing. As I said a few minutes ago, I don't know that at the moment, unless there are some indications that they will be relaxing some of the underwriting standards or relaxing some of the documentation standards that are typical with an SBA 7A loan, and there's no indications that they're going to do that as of right now. It could still, a lot more details could come out over the weekend or early next week, but as of right now, the time from application to funding, best case is probably your 30 to 40 days, and that's with an SBA lender who's experienced and who hustles. Obviously, we are experienced and we hustle, but I would hope that you would not engage an SBA application with someone who's known to take 2 to 3 months to get one of these loans done. That's going to be very problematic and probably won't be very effective in helping stave off problems that's the result of the virus scare. Let's see, Express guarantee still, yeah. So unfortunately, I'm getting questions that are stuff that I answered a few minutes ago. But yes, the Express guarantee, there's been no indication that will raise from the 50% guarantees right now up to the 90% that the 7A will be taken up to. So as we stand right now, I presume it's going to stay at 50%. What will the collateral requirements be on the express loans to $1 million? The collateral requirements, there's been no indication that there's any difference in collateral requirement changes from how the express loan is currently administered. So nothing there. Let's see, are they going to be separating the use of funds from normal business use to disaster relief and treat them differently? No, there's been no indication that there's going to be any separation of funds, although I can't speak from with any detail on the disaster loans themselves, the ones that are actually going to be made by the agency itself. Those loans, we still don't know all the details yet. They will probably be made just like all SBA disaster loans are made when, unfortunately, when there's a disaster every few years, whether it's a hurricane or something else, that does occur. It's, but there's no indications that anything is different from that program. But as a private sector lender, we're not able to administer those loans. So that's going to come straight from the agency itself. And that's different than what we're talking about here on this broadcast. This broadcast is mostly about the SBA 7A loans, the working capital 10-year amortization loans that'll be part of that $50 billion of lending authority allocation that is currently moving its way through Congress. So, any other questions? I hope this has been helpful. You're as up to date as anyone that I know, you're as up to date as I am on this. We will continue to disclose this information as we get it. We'll continue to be an open book as we always are on things like this. And if we can help you in any way, please let us know. Please message me here. Send us emails. You can send it to info@fountainheadcc.com. We'll be happy to send over the application so that you can get started on this. I would urge you, we will probably be processing these first in, first out, so I would encourage you to get started on getting your documentation organized, assembled, and ready to send to us. You can also go to our website, which is www.fountainheadcc.com, where you can upload your information there as well. Wednesday?
Excuse me, Monday at 3 p.m. We'll have a webinar.
Yes, we're gonna have a webinar this Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we hope to have a lot more information at that time. We'd encourage you to hop on the webinar with us. Again, I'll take questions and give you as much information as I have. I've spoken to numerous people that are high up in the agency, and I read the legislation very carefully that comes out of the small business committees. So we're right on the cutting edge of what's occurring and what you can expect to be occurring in the days ahead. Obviously, everyone is working as hard as they can to try to help as many people as possible. These are our public servants are doing all they can to assist folks in this regard, and we're just honored to be one of the distribution channels with which to try and get some of this capital to folks like you. So let's see, what else do we have? We have a couple more questions. I guess the longer I talk, the more questions come up. Borrowers having income cash flow problems now, like a travel agency, how will the borrower qualify? Well, that is a great question. Joel asked that, and that's one of the sort of the fundamental core questions that we have about this legislation. And it's one thing to have a nice new allocation of funds available. And it's nice to have borrower fees, lender fees waived, and maybe even loan amounts raised or at least for the express loan program purposes. But if a borrower has got massive cash flow problems, say they were in the travel business or hospitality, could be a whole host of different things, and they've seen their revenues fall off a cliff in the last 30 days or so, meeting that debt service coverage ratio standard, it may be difficult. So as I know more information, I'll be able to answer that question better. But logic tells me that there will be some common sense rationality that is given to the lenders like ourselves that administer this program to look at things on a case-by-case basis and to make some credit decisions that perhaps we wouldn't make in normal times but we will make in these times of crisis so that we can help those businesses. So it's a very good question. It's a very big one that I have. I just don't have the answer for you right now. I'm not sure how exactly it's going to work. So with that, I think we're done.
Charlie's now live.
Oh, and the president is now live, so maybe get off this with me and go watch the president. Maybe he'll give us some positive news. And otherwise, have yourself a great weekend. I appreciate you tuning in, and hope to see you guys as part of the webinar on Monday. Sorry, at 3:00. Thank you. You good? Trump's live now?